If you want a good life, you need a good woman. Have you ever been with a bad woman? Have you never seen it and then you've learnt afterwards? I can tell you I have. And I ended up that way because I didn't sit down and I didn't learn what made an excellent woman. I didn't know how to recognise virtue in women, in the same way that many women can't recognise virtue in men and so end up with men that aren't good for them. So I figured I'd do some sort of checklist that guys can go back to if they want to find a good woman. Now, I'm basing most of this off of scripture, so it's not actually me talking, although I'll reinforce it with personal experience, because I can tell you, I've been with some pretty crazy women in my time. Also, for the women who are watching, which I suspect is quite a few of you because of the tags, the titles here are from sacred scripture, so if you have any issue with what I've said, then you can take it up with scripture. If you want to end up with a good and virtuous husband, it is fitting that you are a good and you are a virtuous woman. Because if you aren't, then why would a good and virtuous man have any reason to take interest in you? Or stay with you, for that matter. One of the best virtues a woman can have is to be placid and to not be quarrelsome. So I'll tell you a story. I was dealing with this strong, independent woman type, and she was continually going on and on and on about problems that she had, and, you know, doing the whole start fights thing to show how equal I am. You know, that kind of one-upsmanship that you often see women doing. And I considered her a friend because, you know, she was a laugh. But eventually I realised after about a year that she was actually pretty into me. Like, really into me. And I found out some really freaky stuff, actually. Turns out that she thought, because of the way the culture was, is that she needed to act like a strong, independent woman to get a guy. And that's just not true. We men, we deal with banter from other men all day. Most of us work long hours at jobs that we don't necessarily like. And the greatest thing that you can give to a man after hours and hours of work, and I'm sure many of the men will attest here to this, is, you know, some comfort, some placidity, you know. That's the greatest thing you can give us. If for the women watching, and for guys, never, ever go for a woman who is like the strong, independent type. In fact, one of the funniest things I've ever read in scripture, King Solomon essentially says that it's unnatural for an odious woman to be married. So these sorts of strong, independent types, according to King Solomon and according to inerrant scripture, they're not actually supposed to be married. It's unnatural for them to be married. So, yeah, stay away, even for relationships, because they'll make your life hell, and I think the last thing you want is to be dragged through divorce court by a quarrelsome and angry person. The second thing is you want a woman who's humble, because as we all know, self-righteous little pricks are really annoying, and that goes for both men and women, so I'm just stating this generally. You don't want to be involved with a self-righteous person, not only because it's annoying when they think they know better than you when you know that they don't, but because this arrogance will fuck them over. It is the prime vice for a reason to be full of pride. It's a bad vice because if you have pride, then you don't learn anything from the world because you think you're better, and eventually you stumble, and you fall. And a lot of the time, these people won't get up because they're so arrogant. I mean, you only need to look around in today's society to see this. All these people who think they are smart enough to get away with all of these. A lot of men think they can just, you know, have families independent of their wife. And a lot of women will just, you know, cuckold a guy. You know, when you've taken the DNA test and the kid isn't yours. Or when the family gets found out by some random mishap. I wouldn't even have somebody like that as my friend, let alone my spouse. Another thing you want to pay close attention to is leading with acts rather than words. We've all had those sorts of people who've tried to crawl up our arse. They've said all sorts of lovely, sweet things, and then it comes to nothing at all. We don't need that in our families, so we should avoid that. In fact, that same Book of Proverbs says that her words are as honey and her throat smoother than oil, but her intentions are as bitter as wormwood and her feet led down to hell. Now, what is he saying here? Well, if you can't commit to what you're saying, and you merely utter sweet nothings, then what does that mean? It means you've got no virtue at all, because you can't carry out the things you say. Also, if you come across these sorts of women who will just act like it around you, and then they'll do other stuff that's obviously not what you want away from your presence, then she's only trying to impress you. She doesn't actually have anything eternal, so avoid that too. Another thing tangential to this, and I can already hear the baying of the feminists, is that you want to avoid a woman who's overly loud, because if she's making loads of noise, then she's trying to distract from something. She's expressing herself in a way that doesn't mean anything. Like, words, what have they ever done? Actions always do things. And good women realise this, and the ones you want to avoid don't. Same with men. I'm sure we've all seen men say the wrong thing in a bar loudly because they're a fucking moron and then get stomped on by a bunch of geezers. In fact, it's a fatal mistake to have that kind of foolishness in a woman as well, who you want to be with. Remember Pulp Fiction, where Bruce Willis's girlfriend loses his watch, and when going and looking for it, Bruce Willis wastes John Travolta with his own submachine gun, and it ends up in him killing loads of people and getting into gang wars? Yeah, like Tarantino, as weird as the guy is, he had a point there. You don't want to be involved with someone foolish because something like that could happen. And this is repeated again in the scriptures. You want to avoid a woman who's foolish because she'll end up stitching you up. Same with men too. If you're friends with a fool, then he can stitch you up too. How many battles have been lost because one of the leaders was a mong and walked into an ambush? Because of some stupid reason. Quintinius Varus and the Battle of Teutoburg Forest is a really good example. If anybody has heard about Augustus Caesar yelling for Varus to give back his legions, that's why. And if you don't want that in a friend, like Augustus had, how much more so in your wife or your husband? In short, guys, if we use our minds, then we can avoid most of the problems that we could potentially fall into. If you want any of the sources that I've described in the video, they'll be linked in the description, especially Proverbs 31. So, thanks a lot for listening, and I'll see you guys on the next show. A very big thank you to those on the list here. These are subscribers to the Renaissance Man program who get audiobooks and controversial videos every week for $5 a month. There's already quite a lot of content there, so if you check it out in the description, you won't be missing out. Thank you.